Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Excalibur Data Systems Roundtable Tech Talk. I am Mike Fuson. I am joined today by Cam from AlertOps. Cam, thanks for jumping on with me today.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
Yeah. One of the other topics that we had on our list that we wanted to tackle, that's something that it comes up in a lot of our conversations with customers, is SLA based alerting, right? As a corporate-based entity, we may have an SLA and be leveraging SLAs or OLAs, but as an MSP, we definitely have SLAs that we've agreed to with our customers. And we want to ensure that, based on a prioritization matrix, which is usually how SLAs are determined, that we've got the proper alerting going on and things bubbling up to the right level. So talk to me a little bit about the things you're seeing out there in the market and the things the customers are asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that SLA-based alerting is an interesting concept, right? Because it's used, it's out there, and people don't really recognize its value until all of a sudden they need it. And I always come back to this one specific scenario where an individual, one of our customers, was leveraging AlertOps for general on-call alerting, multi-channel alerting, and escalation. And at a certain point, we were getting together just to review their usage, talk about what additional functionality they could be leveraging. And one of the items that was brought up was SLA alerting. So be able to notify management as well as stakeholders when an SLA is pending, it's upcoming, potentially X period before the SLA, or the second that an SLA has been breached. And at that point, the individual in conversation wasn't too keen about it. Oh, we've already got our escalation paths. We've already got our multi-channel alerting. We're going to be totally fine. Great. But a week later, something happens. Someone did not address an incident appropriately, and he wishes that he'd gotten notified 30 minutes before that SLA was breached. So we came back right away because no one really cares until, stuff hits the fan, right? And the way that I consider SLA alerting, on top of your on-call escalation chains, on top of your stakeholder notifications, is its redundancy, its insurance, right? So while everything else falls through the cracks, as many redundancies as you set up have fallen through the cracks, you have insurance that your owner, your service desk manager, your engineering manager is going to be woken up, is going to be notified that, hey, this SLA is about to be breached, or this SLA just was. We need to jump into it. There's some action that needs to be taken. So I really view SLA-based alerting as an add-on and an additional layer of protection beyond just generic notifications.
Well, when you think about SLAs, if you're using them non-traditionally, where it's more of a metric, right? Okay, I can see that not being as big of a deal. But when you start looking at it as an MSP, or if you look at it as a corporate entity where you've agreed, where the SLA is actually an agreement with the end users, I see so often, and SLAs that we provide to our customers, being an ITSM implementer and solutions provider, and working with tools like AlertOps, there's a penalty if we don't meet our SLA, or we've agreed to a certain percentage of the SLA being met. I haven't had too many clients that expect perfection. So we're going to meet it 100% of the time, but the number is pretty high usually. We're going to meet it 95% of the time, right? And for those that we don't meet, we better have a darn good reason why it wasn't met. And those are reasons that I hear in a lot of cases where it becomes an issue, is, well, nobody knew it was about to breach. Okay. We want to know that, hey, this is getting close, especially when you start thinking about things that are like P1s, right? Usually, if it's an incident, your response window is pretty short, and your resolve window can vary depending on how you've set your SLAs up. But it's still going to be much shorter than a P2 or P3 or something that's a request. And so it's important to be able to stay on top of those things. And it gives you that defensible position. I'll think about the days when Excalibur had an MSP division. One of the things that was so critical for us with P1s is we needed to know if we were going to breach the SLA. So a decision could be made, say, like you said, by the service desk manager or an engineering manager to start bringing in more resources. When you start doing then your post analysis, even if you breach the SLA, you can demonstrate to the customer resources were brought in an all-out effort to resolve that in the time allotted. And sometimes the reason it couldn't be allotted is, we were an MSP back in the olden days. A T1 went down. Well, I don't exactly control what AT&T is going to dispatch a technician to deal with that T1, and they have an SLA as well, right? But I may not be. We do everything we can. We've tested everything. We've now called for dispatch. Okay, that's why our SLA breached. We're now dependent on a third party for things that we don't control. It gives you that ability to explain to the customer, okay, what occurred. But if the AT&T call out didn't happen until 4 hours after your SLA breached, the wrong kind of questions are going to start getting asked, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's important to really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And like you said, it almost acts as that safety net, right? If it's an after hour sort of situation, on call should have occurred. What happens if the on call person doesn't respond for some reason? We're reliant on our cell phones, but people do forget to charge them. Or it's in the other room and I didn't hear it. So what's our fallback position? And knowing, hey, we potentially now have a breach going on. Somebody higher up now needs to be notified. And you might not have accounted for that in, say, an on-call rotation or an on-call schedule. Because 99% of the time that works perfectly. Well, then likewise, 99.5% of the time, there's no SLA notifications going on. But when one does happen, you have the ability to have the right people notified that have the ability to make decisions, right? Because you don't want to throw it on your technician. Well, who do I wake up?
Yep. and I love what the point that you made earlier, just regarding what you're using an SLA for. Right, and that it definitely plays a massive role in terms of the conversations that I have with people. If an SLA is just a metric, if an enterprise is trying to bump their uptime from 4 nines to 5 nines, yes, it's a big deal, but it's somewhat marginal to the end user. Now, so when talking to that type of an enterprise, well, we're looking for marginal improvements, so a slight SLA breach isn't a huge deal. But the second that I mentioned this to an MSP, their business, ultimately the delivery that they provide is their service that is compliant with their SLAs. So they get it immediately because they know for a fact that all of their customer experience is contingent on this SLA. So I definitely think that the way the actual functionality as well as value added is envisioned, MSPs get it right away. Whereas I think that notion and that shift of using SLA purely as a metric to something that's actionable is still in progress at the corporate and enterprise world.
Well, I think of it as an MSP when you're your QBR.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to have you're putting all the things on the table. That may be the difference in a couple bad QBRs of a renewal or a non-renewal. And so when you've put the systems in place to backstop you and ensure that you can demonstrate to the client in the QBR, look, we pulled out all the stops. And as an MSP, previously in a previous life, one of the things that was always interesting is to be able to demonstrate to the customer, here's everything that was done on this, and the customer goes, okay, well, we're fighting with AT&T now. We've had one too many outages in our T1, and so we're working that because we own that relationship. But they see what was done, and you were able to explain the why, and demonstrate. Well, hey, we had additional engineers that came on. Here's the additional testing that was done. And we determined that even before it breached, we did the call out. But we have to keep the thing open because it's pending. And all it depends on how you run your SLAs. But in a traditional SLA structure, there is no stop the clock. It's did you fix it in the allotted time or not? And if you didn't, why? Right? And it isn't designed to be punitive. If the why is a reasonable expectation, well, Cam didn't wake up. That's not a good why.
That's not a why,
right? But it helps to demonstrate, and then you can also demonstrate what are you doing to try to ensure that situation doesn't occur again. And there are times, we're seeing it in today's world with supply chain things. I see it with our corporate entities and even some of our MSP customers, where they may have on a request for a new laptop. They may have an SLA on that, and they've had to go to the customers and say, listen, we're going to need some flexibility here because we don't control any. Dell doesn't ship the stuff as fast as they once did. There are some things that are now beyond our control, and most customers that I've seen that we've talked to have been pretty reasonable about it. But these are real world things that we're dealing with today, but it impacts the SLA, and that explains your why. But are we doing things to try to shore that up, or being able to come to the customer with creative solutions? I know one of our MSPs, one of their large customers, they did an analysis. Okay, over the course of the last 2 years, every quarter, how many laptops did you order? Mm-hmm. And here was the average. So now, rather than ordering them just in time, which it's a frustration for you guys that sometimes you have a new employee on board and they don't have a piece of equipment, do you want us to have X number on hand? There's a cost to doing that, but it gave them the ability to start to look at that to help solve those problems. When you look at what AlertOps is going to do for us, it helps kind of fill that gap that me as, say, the engineering manager or the desktop support manager gets notified, hey, you had a 6-day SLA to deliver this laptop, and we're 2 days from breach, and there's been no update. Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to know why there's been no update posted. Are we checking on this? What's happening? So we can do, in that case, we can do client communications. It could be very, very basic things like that. But when you really look at where does this really fill the gap, and it's hugely beneficial, is really those incident SLAs, where you need to have a response by a certain time and you need to have a resolve by a certain time. And if we're going to be bumping up against that, whatever our threshold is, we've notified the right people who may need to step in and bring in additional resources or what have you as part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look forward to diving into this further with you too, and looking from a UI perspective, the many options that AlertOps gives us, and the flexibility. And really, that's the one thing I can't help our folks that are watching understand enough, is that with the AlertOps platform, unlike what you're going to see in a PSA or an ITSM system, which are going to be a little bit more restrictive, AlertOps is an alerting platform. So it's designed for flexibility and designed so you can have, well, in case A, we do number one, in case B, we do number two, and in case C, and then if we're somewhere in between, you can get very creative with how you have these things work to account for the many different circumstances. And when you think of it as an MSP, also, you're going to be able to set these up as it relates to customers, and you're agreed to, because one customer's SLAs may be customer A's and customer B's SLAs may be a bit different, or there's different package levels, or any of the myriad of ways that MSP services are sold. Then you have that one special customer that you've negotiated a special thing with. You're able to set up your structure to account for their incidents and their requests, and be able to manage that very effectively. This flexibility is the big thing, and the host of options that are available to be able to do it. That is what AlertOps brings to the table as the power behind your alerting and communications, because it's not just an alerting platform, it's a communications platform, and it brings so much to the table to do that. So I'm looking forward to it, Cam. It's going to be fun when we talk about it. So as always, ExcaliburData.com. We have some great information out there on the website about AlertOps. We'd love to talk to you. Reach out to us. We'll get Cam, one of his cohorts, on the horn with you, and we can talk about all of the power that AlertOps can bring to your corporate or MSP organization. Cam, as always, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike, for having me on.
Great, and we'll see everybody again soon on another episode. Take care, everyone.